What's up, internet? My name's Ori. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit that like button, hit that notification bell. You'll never miss a video. You'll never miss a stream. Today, we're going over the newest digital daily that was released on Big Brother Canada's website. And listen, this one's a little bit different because one of the big things that's going to be going on this week is Whodunnit. So if you remember back to BBCan11, there was the invisible HoH. And one of the things with that is we don't know who will be the HoH. And there's not many cases where when you were watching the feeds, you could definitively say, oh, I know this person won, but you can use some knowledge of who's close to each other in the game to kind of figure out who it's not. So when we are talking about some of these conversations, I'm going to try and put in there like, oh, you know, I think this person would tell the other person, or if they wouldn't tell the other person. And there's just a lot of speculation. So most of these conversations are like, was it you? No. Was it you? No. So there's not really a lot of solid stuff to go on. On top of that, the dailies have shown that we really can't trust them very much. Comparing the daily information to the episode information, to the deleted scene information, there's really just no way to fully be able to trust what is actually going on in some of the players' heads. Even the DR sessions have lied to us and seem to not be telling 100% of the truth. So take with this what you will. Take with this what you will. But let's try and go over at least a little bit of what we know. First off, how did the HoH competition work? This I have kind of think I have figured out, maybe, sort of. Basically, they were given the option of making a bet between $1,000 and $50,000. You could bet as much as you want in between that, but whoever got closest to the average number would be the HoH. Here's the catch, though. The amount would be taken from the winnings, I'm thinking, right? So it wasn't specifically said, but all the vibes I was getting and all the little pieces I was gathering from the different conversations was whatever was the winning number would be subtracted from the end winning amount of money at the game, right? So if 50,000 was the winning number, well, 50,000 would be taken away from the winner at the end of the show. That's what it sounded like. It's very similar to things they had on The Mole this past season. If anybody watched The Mole on Netflix, it's very, very similar to some of the stuff they did over there. So it's interesting and it's kind of cool. I'm excited to see how it plays out and who bet what and where it all ended. Veto will also be invisible. We don't know anything about it yet, but one thing that several of the house guests brought up was if you win HoH and you have to name a replacement nominee because the veto was used, you would potentially be able to figure out who won veto because they wouldn't be an option to go up on the block, right? So just a hypothetical, right? Let's just use the three up top there, Anika, Claudia, and Dan. Let's say Anika nominated Claudia and Dan, and Claudia wins veto. Or, you know what? It wouldn't be able to be Claudia. So let's say Anika nominates Claudia and Dan. Daniel wins veto, takes Claudia off the block. Anika then has to name a replacement nominee, but she doesn't know who the veto winner is. If she tried to nominate Daniel, she would then know who the veto winner was. So I don't know what the solution will be to this. The players don't seem to know what the solution will be to this. Maybe Big Brother has a plan so that wouldn't be the case. And it probably wouldn't even necessarily happen, but now with so many of the numbers dwindling by the time they got to this twist, it seems likely that that could be a potential scenario. So let's just kind of jump into some of the conversations that did happen. Again, a lot of it is just kind of back and forth of speculating, but we had Ty and Claudia kind of start things off. It seems like they're coming back together, but again, this is where you can't fully trust the dailies because we've seen on the episode where Claudia is pulling away from Ty, but then she's always hanging around Ty, and Ty and her don't necessarily trust each other very much and don't share a lot of game information. But at the same time, they're always, around each other. Are they using it for game? Are they being more serious with it? Did they break up like one of the deleted scenes on the website showed? We really don't know 100%. But in this conversation, Ty kind of talks about like, listen, we got to kind of, come together, be more of a unit, especially now that Zach's gone. And she says like how, tough it was on her when she thought he was going to leave. And he said like, yeah, like I was sad too. Like I was even crying with the idea that I wouldn't be able to see you. So it seems like maybe they're coming back more together. We don't know. He talks to her about saying like seeing if they can get the girls to kind of work together with him. Because they could still kind of do that thing where they were talking with Zach, where it's, Renee, Claudia, Nene, Dan, Ty. They maybe feel like Daniel C could be pulled into that as well. And apparently the biggest concern is with Renee saying that, Claudia has Ty, Nene has Dan. Who does she really have? And Ty's like, well, Zach could have been that person for her. No, it wouldn't have worked out like that, but good try, Ty. And they said if they did do this, it would be them against Anika, Kuzi, Hope, and Jonathan. But one, that's them having to pull Daniel C over, which maybe could happen with Kuzi giving him the ultimatum on Zach. But I don't see that happening. Also, Jonathan and Hope and Kuzi, I don't know how tight the three of them really are necessarily, so we'll have to see how that all goes. But it's a thing. And they also necessarily said they didn't want to go against John, but they might have to, right? Like if he's on the other side, he's on the other side. So they wouldn't want to go against Jonathan, but they would if they had to. And then eventually we had some jumping around, but Ty does go off to try and have a conversation with Santina, but we never actually see that conversation with Santina. Then we go to Hope and Jonathan, and a good portion of these dailies were focused on the two of them, which kind of gives me the assumption that maybe Jonathan might be the HOH. Because again, we can kind of already point out like a couple of things, right? Hope isn't the HOH. We know Hope is not the HOH. How do we know that? And how does the rest of the house know that? Oh, that's right, because he was punished and couldn't compete in this HOH. Just so happens this is the HOH where everyone is going to be a suspect and everyone's getting fingers pointed out at them except for Hope. Is that a punishment? No, that's an advantage. Because this is the one HOH where, hey, everyone knowing you can't compete is actually a good thing. It is. It just is. Even if you do end up being a nominee, right? No one can then even think, if you weren't, that you're the HOH. Because you couldn't possibly be the HOH. We also know it's not Kuzi. That's for sure. So those are two names right off the bat that cannot be the HOH. Anyway, just my little rant there, because listen, Hope cheated. Come on, guys, he cheated. Whether you agree that it was an emotional advantage or not, he ended up using it as a game advantage, and then the punishment ended up being an advantage. It is what it is. Anyway, John and Hope, they're having the conversation where John's telling him, like, listen, just trust me. Like, I don't think it's them, so trust me. And we weren't 100% sure, like, who was he talking about, right? Like, what does he mean? But later, it seems like he was talking about Ty and Claudia, because then, they end up moving from the couch where Hope was eating a really nice looking burrito. I'll tell you, that thing looked great. They moved from the couch into the pool room. where Hope kind of continues to ask, like, why do you feel, it's not them? They were looking real cozy, and Ty and Claudia would be the one that were looking cozy up in the thing. I think Hope even actually, if I'm remembering correctly, Hope even says by name Ty and Claudia. But Jonathan just says he's like, listen, I'm not 100% sure. I can't be positive, but I just feel like it's not them. And this is where we also got some more information about how the competition worked. They were actually surprised that so many people bet $50,000 for it. John's said, here's the thing, which makes me now think it could be Jonathan. At one point, Jonathan said he put down 50, but then later he says he bet 25,99999 because he thought, oh, like that would be right in the middle. That's the average. So was that just him slipping up, or did he said he maybe, like, again, this is part of the thing with the dailies. Sometimes it's even just hard to really understand what the context of what somebody's saying is. Like, was he saying I put down 50 or I should have put down 50? Like, it's hard to really get all that from these dailies, but pretty much this was just Hope saying, like, it's not you, and he's like, no, it's not me, but like I feel good, like I feel like we're fine. They both kind of talk about how, like, they're not afraid to go up. If they go up, it is what it is, and they just want to know who it is, right? Like, who could it be? They don't think it's the girls of Renee, Claudia, or Nene. And even if it was them, they feel like they would be okay if it was. Hope still, like I said, thinks it's Jonathan, but he just keeps denying it pretty much the whole time. They do end up talking about Zach self-evicting, and Jonathan's like, man, like I think it would be cool, right? Like, you get to go out, talk to Arisa, have the whole like interview and stuff. But Hope says people were saying he felt like he was really cheated, which kind of was. Would anything really have changed in the game? Maybe, maybe not, right? Probably still ends up on the block, probably still ends up getting evicted. But Hope cheated. Listen, Hope cheated. So they kind of just talked about, that kind of stuff. Eventually, they also had a conversation in the hot tub area with Santina involved too. But again, it was just more of like, oh, who do you think it was? I don't know. What do you think's going to happen? That kind of a thing. So really not even that important. We did actually, you know what? I forgot. We did get the Ty and Santina conversation as I'm looking at my notes here. And, they talk about, who it could be and how, the competition worked. Santina said she felt really dumb because, and this is where I also think it could be Santina, because she said she wrote down 100500, which would be 100,000, and you're only allowed to bid 50,000. So it makes me seem like maybe she's lying there, and she said, like, I'm dumb, like, and she was trying to play up on that because eventually she says to Ty's, like, well, at least I'm pretty, right? So she thinks it's Ty. Ty thinks it's Jonathan, and Ty thinks Jonathan would put him up, which is interesting because Ty was Jonathan was telling Hope he doesn't think it's Ty or Claudia. Meanwhile, Ty thinks it's him and thinks he's in danger. We ended up getting a bunch of them kind of sitting in the living room. I think it was Anika, Santina, Kuzi, Daniel. They were all just kind of chilling, talking about the rules. This is where they actually brought up the whole idea of like, well, if you win veto and you take somebody off, HoH could then potentially know who you are because you're not available to be put up. And how would that work? So they talk about maybe even asking the DR how that would all work. Eventually, though, we do get just Claudia and Daniel sitting there, and they were speculating that it could be Jonathan. They both feel kind of dumb because they say they bet low and should have bet higher. Daniel says that Zach would have been great at this game. Probably would have been. And that, he didn't want to say it in front of everybody, but he kind of misses them. But Claudia says she does too, and like she actually was really close to him. But when they were sitting around, they felt really good about everyone but one person. And she doesn't necessarily say who, but I assume she means Santina. And she says if Zach was still here, they'd actually feel much more scared. And Daniel kind of agrees. They also kind of speculate it could be Dan. Dan is someone that they think is a strong possibility of being the HOH currently. We also then saw Claudia and Renee, and this gives me a little bit more insight on who I don't think is possible to be the HOH. Claudia and Renee are talking to each other. They're very close. It's kind of like, Claudia, Renee, and Nene are all like a really tight trio. So if one of them was the HOH, unless they're smart enough, because the real thing is, even if you trust someone, you don't tell them you're the HOH, period. Don't tell anyone. Like, you don't. So if you're smart enough, you wouldn't. But I feel like Claudia, Renee, and Nene, if they're alone in a room because they were alone in the bathroom, they would tell each other, right? Or they wouldn't be speculating on who else they thought it could be because they would probably know it was one of the others. So when Claudia and Renee are speculating, thinking that it could be Jonathan and that he could put up Ty and Dan, they were thinking about, like, if he did that, then Nene could be in danger of being a replacement nominee. When they're thinking that all through, at least that's what it is happening to me is, well, I think that means Claudia, Renee, and Nene are not the HOH. Because if they were, they're more than likely they would have told each other. Make sense? So at least on my list right now, Hope, not the HOH. Punishment was an advantage. Kuzi is not the HOH because she was the previous HOH, unless for some reason they told her she could play. But I didn't get that vibe when she had her talk with Santina. That was kind of the only time we saw Kuzi doing much game talk. And then we had Claudia, Renee, and Nene, who, again, one of them could be, but I feel like it's more than likely the three of them would know if one of the others was HOH. So they wouldn't be speculating on their own about somebody else winning it. So those are probably my 5 that wouldn't be it, which then leaves a good amount of people still. You got Jonathan, Ty, Anika, Daniel, Dan, and Santina. Didn't really get much from Anika. She was in the kitchen a lot of the times when they would show like big groups. We didn't really get a lot of like alone time with her. She was there in the living room when they were kind of chatting about, how some of the rules go. We didn't see Dan really alone at all. Santina, very strong possibility. John, a very strong possibility. All 6 of them are very strong possibilities for being HOH. But again, you can't really necessarily 100% rule out anyone other than Hope because he can't play, which is an advantage. Anyway, that's pretty much it for the dailies. There wasn't like a lot of concrete information. A lot of it's just little speculation. It was only about an hour and a half long. There was a good bit of fluff in there too. So we didn't get a lot, but we did learn some things and potentially who could be, who couldn't be the HOH. I think for the most part, these dailies this week are going to be a little bit useless as far as solid information goes. We'll maybe get like, oh, these are who's nominated, right? But we won't know who nominated them. It would then give us a little bit more insight on who isn't the HOH, because I would assume the HOH can't nominate themselves. Wouldn't that be nuts if you were the invisible HOH and you could nominate yourself? Ooh. Not worth the risk, I don't think. We won't really know who won veto even, but we maybe could get spoilers on who the veto was used on or if it was used at all. But yeah, the episodes are really going to be where we get the solid stuff of what's actually going on this week, because it's going to be a weird one, but it should be a fun one. I'm kind of interested in how all this plays out. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think. Again, I know a lot of you do not agree with me that Hope cheated. He cheated, but it is what it is, and that's okay. It's okay to disagree, right? Like, one of the things that I really do believe, and I was trying to answer as many of the comments I could, because a lot of you had good points that you were trying to get across, and I don't agree with all of them. But I think for the most part, all of us can kind of agree. Hope had something that wasn't allowed in the game. Whether or not you think that's an emotional advantage or not, that's one thing. I personally think it is. If you kind of think of anything that, could be a boost to you inside that house, I think you would also agree that, like, hey, it would be nice to have that. And then on the other side, too, you have the idea that he used this as part of his strategy of trying to make people think he was, homesick, ready to leave, could be evicted at any moment, and he's fine with being evicted, even showing the note to people to try and get them to trust him more. It's very similar to things that have happened in other seasons of Big Brother. I know two examples that really actually stuck out, and actually I thought were great examples on why this was bad and those weren't, was Dan swearing on a Bible, and Kevin last season on BBCan11 having the wedding ring and kind of using that as a way to manipulate people. Both of those things are legally able to be had in the house by house guests. Anyone can have a piece of jewelry. Anyone can have a Bible. And not everyone would use it for game, but if you do, good on you. That's totally fair. But if you have something that no one else possibly can have or shouldn't have, and then you use that for your game, that feels like cheating. That's just me. Either way, does it change much? No. But I do think the punishment did not fit the crime. And if anything, it kind of put Hope in a better position moving forward than if he never received it at all. That's just my thoughts. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What did you think of the daily? What do you think of this whole Whodunnit week? Who are your best guesses on who might be the HOH this week? Who would you like to see the HOH this week? And who do you think they would nominate in secret? Because who you would nominate in secret is maybe different than who you would nominate if it was out in the open. So I want to see all of that stuff in the comments down below. Once again, if you are new here, hit that subscribe button. You like this video, hit that like button. If you made it all the way to the end of this video after my rants about Hope cheating, smash that like button and hit that notification bell so you never miss a video, you never miss a stream. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you, even when we disagree. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you next time.